evening. This evening, I'm very happy to welcome great artist. She's a model and actress and filmmaker and author, Kristina Korsholm, basically from Denmark, and she lives between Europe and the United States. Good evening, Kristina. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's a great pleasure having you live on my YouTube channel. And briefly, I would like to know, how did you get interested into becoming a model? And after this, when did you decide to venture into acting and filmmaking and producing?
Okay, I'll try to make it brief. So the modeling part was kind of a thing that kept popping up as a teenager. I would be stopped in the streets in Copenhagen and asked to come meet an agency. But I grew up in a commune, and like my upbringing and my friends, they were very much, like flower children, and we weren't really, it wasn't cool to be a model at all. So I didn't start modeling until late in my late teens. Like people start really early usually. It was a trip to, I was driving across the States in a car with my girlfriend, and we ended up out in Los Angeles. And we had no more money, so I got a job in a shoe store at Melrose Avenue. And there, an Italian photographer, he approached me, and I actually knew his images, Fabrizio Rainone, and he said, we need to take some photos together. And I was like, at that point, my girlfriend, she didn't really want to travel with me anymore, and I was alone there, so I thought, why not? And the pictures turned out good, and then he was like, let's go to New York. I live in New York. I can get you an agent. And yeah, then I moved to New York and fell in love with the city, and then I became a model.
Great. And I'm very familiar with a lot of magazines, French and like Madame, like Cosmopolitan. I'm very familiar with a lot of modeling magazine, Cosmopolitan, Vogue. You've been in most of them, But I really, I've been seeing a lot of reading articles, seeing some maybe documentaries about modeling. About some models leave the job early. According to you, is it a tough business, or it is a glamorous business, or it's a mix of both?
Oh, it's all of the above. It's actually my New York trip. I got into an agency, but it was way too tough for me. I think I was like 19 or 20, and I was kind of from Denmark and thought you could trust adults. That's kind of like my upbringing was all about, trusting people, and that was not the case. So I actually quit the agency there because it was too rough and too tough, and you could feel sometimes when you went into a studio with a photographer, he definitely wanted something more than just take photos of you. But then on the other side, on the other hand, I had private driver. I went to the most glamorous parties and tried stuff I never would have tried in the travels if I hadn't been with an agency. But then when I went back to Denmark, I signed with the lead models, and in Copenhagen, everything was way more chilled and, kind of on a level where I liked it, and, at least for me at that time. And then I started studying as well, went to university. So for me, modeling was great. I'd become a little bit older. I was also, at that point, I became the Scandinavian version of an MTV host. It's called Set TV in Scandinavia. So I had like 3 weekly shows, and that combined with my modeling, I could afford university, and later on I could afford moving to New York again and going to acting school. So it's worked out great for me. I got I got like a Teflon shield from it, you can say, because you I don't know, the modeling, it's so weird. Like you see some of the most beautiful people, and at the same time, they're the ones with the most anxiety about how they look. It's like a mind fuck.
Yes, but tell me, how did you manage to live between culture? From your words, and I know Copenhagen and the Scandinavian part of Europe, is quite different than New York and the United States. How did you digest this and put yourself, in the movie business later on?
Well, I think an important step in my childhood we skipped is when I was 12, my dad, he got a job in New Mexico in Los Alamos. He's a scientist, so at the national lab. And since my mom and dad, they were never married, they were best friends, so they didn't live together. I moved with my dad to Los Alamos, and that was a radical culture shock for me because it's New Mexico is very different from any other state. It's like actually my favorite state today. But this middle school or junior high school I went to was really tough. And, as I said before, I grew up kind of like the school I went to, it was all about painting and music, and we didn't get grades until ninth grade. And here it's all about the grades. I think it's like, it's the sixth ranked best school in America, the school I went to. So it was like really tough for me to fit in. And I was too tall, and I was so blonde, and I looked weird compared to everybody else. But I think just saying that later on, as a child, you get really good at kind of like fitting in. So that talent I kind of like cultivated inside myself, and that made it easier for me to try to fit in different places and learn new languages or new behaviorisms. And I realized I started talking really fast after I moved to New York, because if you want to, people, they don't want to listen to you if you talk for too long, just cut you off. So yeah, it's I don't know if I answered your question, but I think because of that childhood memory, that kind of gave me not only some tools, a toolbox, but also gave me this gusto to go explore the world. And I found out that I can actually, I can exist pretty much anywhere.
Yes. Talking about the American education system, I think it's quite similar to maybe the American mentality. It's about grades and it's about numbers, statistics. I don't know. And I remember watching a documentary by Michael Moore, who did Bowling for Columbine and Fahrenheit 9/11, and in this documentary he compared. I think he went to shoot in Sweden as well, in some schools, how they educate children, and also he compared the meals they have, in midday, how the American teenagers are fed during high school, in the restaurants, and compared to the European system, so this brought memories of watching this documentary, and of course I think maybe most of your colleagues were African Americans, Latinos, of course, in this high school, correct?
It was, this school is a little bit different because it's Los Alamos. It's like the Manhattan Project. This is where Oppenheimer created the first atomic bomb.
Yes.
So and then uh, make bombs, he makes artificial life, something completely different. But there's a lot of scientists there, so I think it's this weird mix of elitist people, like really brainy people from all over the world. So it was very international. And then you have like right side outside of Los Alamos, you have Hispaniola, which where they pretty much only speak Spanish, and you have areas that are extremely illiterate in New Mexico, and then you have like the Mount Rossmore area that is, with UFOs and stuff. So it's a very diverse state, and you have all the indigenous people in their land, the tribes. It's quite beautiful. But I know this is not supposed to be a talk about Europe versus America, but yeah, it's kind of over the past, let's say, to 2008, the depression there. It's become obvious that the system is not sustainable on the long run. I know
Yes.
in America, that's just a fact.
Yes, I see in your debuts you did a lot of short films, since 2009 and so on. So tell me, these short films was like some kind of introductory for you to the entertainment or filmmaking experience, and do you think they brought to you some, I mean, uh, uh, you become more known in the film business before venturing into feature television and becoming a filmmaker yourself?
I think I kind of, again, very late became interested in acting. I was behind the camera before. I loved photography. Obviously, I was a model, but I loved photography. I was directing small things for TV and producing stuff, writing stuff. I'm also a writer. I came out with a book in 2008 called New York City Head Over High Heels. But I was really curious, especially after doing 2 years at the William Esper Studio in New York, where it was acting. I just fell in love with the craft, and I fell in love with the feeling of actually not having to think about how you look all the time, because it was kind of reversing and taking away the model in me, and then becoming a real human again. And I love that process. And I think the short films I've been in they've been a great introduction, kind of like a film school, a way of learning, the craft of acting. And, I always love being on set. It's like a huge love affair. And there's always these great stories. There's always drama when you're in film sets because there's huge egos and, all that stuff. But I think if you want to get into the industry of doing short films, like, do as much as you can. Like, have fun with it. It's just, and learn to find your own voice and your own legs in it. So, for instance, I'm comparing myself with my husband. He wanted to be an actor since he started speaking, like, since he was 2 or 3 years old, and I only wanted to do it much, 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 much later in my life. But it's been, it's interesting to see, when I've watched his stuff and I've watched my stuff, how you, through these short films and whatever you get to do, theater, performances, you slowly become better and better, and, you find your own voice. And I guess that goes for all art, really. If you're in fine arts, you're painting, a sculptor, or making jewelry, or music. So yes, short films are important. And actually, I just did one in 19, just before the pandemic, and we finished it just before, like, in 2020. And I was supposed to go to festivals, but yeah, everything closed down. Lioness, and I co-wrote it, and I starred in it. I played the 2 characters in it, and
This is the one in your showreel. I saw a clip on your showreel. You are talking to yourself, and I thought this is a feature or a series. So this is not yet released.
It's not yet released. It's now we're submitting it to festivals, but it is. We talked about turning it into a feature, because it's like, the voices in your head that you have. They keep terrorizing,
It could be a very. Yesterday, I was talking to Paul Bloom. He's organizing a horror festival in South Africa.
Oh wow!
And I think this film, I imagine it's kind of psychological drama. could fit in
with
this festival.
with that twist in the end.
With a twist in the end. It could fit to this festival next year. So let's remind ourselves of that. Tell me, before talking about your work as a producer as well, I want to ask you about your two books. You mentioned one, and you have another one. It's called Head Over Heels. It's correct. Head over
It's
high.
yes, it's again a love story with my favorite city of all cities, New York. I love New York, and in 2007, I was approached by a publishing agency in Denmark, actually the oldest one we have, and
Yes.
they were interested in me writing a book about living in New York. And at that point, I have a bachelor's degree in journalism, and I have another bachelor's degree in film. So I wrote for a lot of magazines, and I've been writing, copywriter and whatnot for many years. So, but I'd never given it a thought to write a book, but I did, and it just became kind of again, I was finding my legs in it. I was kind of like testing myself in New York. Like, okay, so I went out and had a lot of experiences and wrote about them basically. And then, it's not all true. I changed names and altered some of the experiences, but it's kind of people call it a little bit of survival guide to New York, but also inspiration. It's really about following your dreams, going for what you want.
I visited New York several times during Tribeca Festival in April or May, and I stayed May, June. Maybe I go to Los Angeles as well to see more friends and colleagues in our industry. I never experienced New York in the cold, in the winter, Christmas and snow. So when I think Robert De Niro has chosen Tribeca Festival in April, it is the best time of the year, the beginning of spring. So it was very nice time every time we go there to watch films and meet filmmakers, etc. in April in New York. And I know as well some of the upstate places like Yonkers and Westchester. I used to write for a weekly newspaper called Westchester Guardian as well in New York. But right now, can you tell me how did you meet your husband and then decided to set together your entertainment company? It's called Bonavida, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So we met some 10 years ago, actually on a short film. We were both cast in Denmark. At that time, he was happily married to an American Korean woman, and I was in a relationship with a man who lived in Nicaragua. So I was living between LA and Nicaragua at that time. It was a fantastic time. I really enjoyed experiencing Nicaragua. So we were to play a couple in this film, and it was such a low budget film, and but it was with great friends, people we're still really good friends with today and work with today, and we became friends and stayed in touch. And even though I lived in LA at that time, he was living in Denmark with his American wife. Whenever we were kind of on the same continent, in the same city, we would help each other out with auditions. It's nice to have somebody to read with. And I think he was very interested to move to LA. So he was asking me a lot about how it is in LA and, as an actor and whatnot.
Yes.
I had just started out acting pretty much. And he had done it for many years. And then, fast forward, I was a lot in Europe again because I booked a show in called The Team, which is still going, I think. But I was in the first season and I became a series regular, and so I was filming a lot in Europe. And then I think we started talking again, and then he asked me if I wanted to help him write a movie. That he had this idea from his. He lived in Tokyo for a long time, and he had this idea about he wanted this like this, but it's a female lead, so I needed a female perspective. And I was like, let me look at the synopsis, and I loved it. So we started working together, and we were both, at one point, we were both single, and then very slowly we started dating. It was super, super slow. And yeah, today we're married. We actually got married this year. So
Yeah. Congratulations.
thank you. I guess I married one of my best friend, like my best friend, and I never thought that would be a thing I would do. But I can really recommend it because we share the same interests. We love film, we love TV. We can, I don't know. This is like a backdrop, in our office where we have lamps and set up so we can do additions and we help each other with that as much as we can. And it's kind of a partner, life partner to have to do this because it's really hard. In other relationships I've been in to, be able to put all your energy into this, creating films and writing and producing, if the other part is not as interested in it as you are.
Yes. So right. What do we expect? The films you have shot and not yet released. What can you tell us?
Well, so there's unfortunately this pandemic has been a disaster for everything. Us, like the film industry, basically just locked down for a year over here. So we were lucky we could go to Denmark and work with our Danish passports. But we have a full slate, which we're pushing to, get rolling again. And then I get booked into a project that I'm shooting. That's something I'm producing. It's a studio film. It's a superhero film, but I cannot, unfortunately, not talk about it. It starts shooting later this month here in LA, so I'm very excited about that.
Excellent.
And then I have a documentary right now that is touring on festivals. It was just at the United Nations Film Festival in Palo Alto, San Francisco, where we were the closing film, and so I flew up there and represented it and did a Q&A. It was wonderful to meet all these people. It's a human rights film festival, so it's very important. And a few weeks ago, I was in Prague, also with the same Film Solutions call, and we won the grand prize, first prize. So that was very cool.
This is Solutions, the documentary, right?
Yes, I'm an associate producer and co-writer on it, and my dad is actually in it. It has a scientific approach to, and it's giving solutions to our big world problems as climate change, quality, and stuff like that.
What was your father's speciality as a scientist?
Excuse me, what was what?
What was your father's speciality as a scientist? What is your father's speciality?
Oh, he's a physicist, and he tries to create artificial life. I'm sure you've heard of artificial intelligence. So he's trying to create, replicate, or make non-living material come alive, if you will. So it's complicated stuff.
Yes, I look forward to see the documentary. I love science fiction, and also a lot of films, are science fact, related to science, like Apollo 13. It's related to factual events, of course. And right now, I think the world is entering a new stage of technology. Last week, I think you've heard about Facebook announcing a virtual reality platform, of course, and we are hearing about people trying to create like Elon Musk, with satellites and going to Mars. It's not a science fiction anymore in films and Jules Verne novel, of course. So I think we are entering a new stage of technology right now.
Oh, totally. I actually did a show, a little science show called Conversations About the Future, which was
Yeah,
sponsored by the four biggest universities in Denmark. And basically, I went around the world and talked to some of the great thinkers and asked them what they think the emerging technologies will do to us as humans and our society, and what are the challenges and the possibilities for the new technologies. It was super exciting, and one of them actually talked a lot about virtual reality, how that is going to be. It already is a part of our life, but it's going to, be integrated way more. And speaking of new projects, I'm actually I'm starting a collaboration with an old friend, Pepe Moreno, who's also a fantastic comic book artist, and he has created this virtual reality called Beachhead, and Beachhead. I'm going to be a character there, and later on be turned into an NFT. He creates this fantastic universe, and it's a game you can play in there. The interface is beautiful, but you can also they also have their own cryptocurrency, so
yeah,
you can actually earn money and a lot of money while you play. So it's kind of right now the old world is you pay to get entertained. Here you get paid and you get entertained. Like I like the business model, so I'm going into that as a character and getting my toes wet with this world, or as we speak actually.
great. Before I close this great conversation, I want to mention, of course, that you work with Tom Berenger, and before we
Oh,
started to record, how was it to work with Tom Berenger? I think he's one of the great actors. He's very diverse, and of course, I met him more than 10 years ago in Cairo Festival. He was jury member, and I remember he told me this is my first time as jury. I didn't know it's a very tough, thing, because he used to watch like 4 films a day, feature films, so, and the
yeah.
competition is 10 days, like every day you watch 4 films. I think it's too much, you know. But how was it to
Yeah.
work with him in Firstborn?
First of all, I want to say I always wanted to visit the Cairo Film Festival. I think it sounds amazing. I've heard so much good about it. I just want to put
Yeah,
that in there. And well, so that was the movie Firstborn. I actually wasn't on set with him, unfortunately.
yeah,
I'm a huge fan of him too. I think he's amazing. I can't get enough of watching him, and yeah, he can. Yeah, his diversity is fantastic.
yeah,
I was on set with Robert Knepper, who he did was it called Prison Break? I think he played
yeah,
a really really nasty character, and he was fun to be on set with him. That was quite something. It was really interesting to see him work. Actually, the director of Firstborn didn't speak English at all, so he had an interpreter. So he would
yeah,
come over and say this and that and the other, and then the interpreter would actually say block your scenes and whatnot. But then Robert would add his 2 cents to how to shoot this scene, and well, maybe we can instead of doing all the cuts, we can do a longer take.
yes,
And to be honest, as a theater trained actor, I love that because then
yes,
you're on the spot all the time, and you just moving lights, moving this, moving that. And I think like his pointers really helped the scene. So it was a cool
yes.
experience.
Yes, Hitchcock used to do that a lot in his thrillers. Continuous shot, like they say in French, plan séquence. And if you see some of his films, like Snake Eyes with Nicolas Cage, and his early
Mm.
films, he directed and co-wrote with Paul Schrader, a lot of psychological thriller, in the 70s,
Yeah,
like Dress to Kill, and you know, before, of course, doing Scarface and Carlito's Way and Untouchables. He did a lot of
yeah.
Hitchcockian thriller, and of course, yeah, I see that, it's a great technique, to bring the audience in the place of the protagonist,
Yeah, I love it. Also, Cassavetes and Rollins. I think
of
they're just like my favorite couple in the world. Woman Under an Influence is one of my favorite films. Just being able to create that space for the actor to show the emotions or where the scene is heading or tell the story. It's something that's a little bit forgotten, I feel, in this fast-paced
yes, sure.
world. And even though I'm a tech nerd and I'm going into virtual reality, and I just made a documentary, a 2-hour long documentary about science, and I'm trying to make science sexy and give it a voice. I really, really enjoy the old school. Like that's just I want to make movies like that too.
Yes, I hope myself to see your solution, and I hope you don't forget to submit it to Ismailia Festival in Egypt. It's a documentary festival next
Okay.
year. And here, I'm Egyptian, but I live here in Quito with my wife, in
Okay.
Ecuador. And we have an excellent festival for documentaries called EDOC.
Oh,
And I think it will be very great to screen your documentary in both countries. So
fantastic.
I hope we can see it in both country, and I hope one day I can make a conversation with your father as well, because I studied
Yes,
engineering.
sure. Let's connect.
I know about physics and stuff like that. My background is science as well. So I think
Sure.
after watching the documentary, we should have a conversation, maybe an interview as well.
Fantastic. Sounds great. Sounds good.
Christine, I want to thank you very much. It was a great pleasure talking to you on the live, and best wishes to you, to your father, to your husband, and coworker David Sakurai. Is correct? I
Yeah.
pronounced the name right.
Yeah. Good
Yes,
job. I think it's
yes,
easier to pronounce than my name almost. It sounds like
yes,
samurai his name.
yes. It's easy, yes, to pronounce. And I look forward for your next project, and I look forward for your next as well comic book project as well next year. I think we can see it, and don't forget to invite us to the premiere.
I will. Thank you so much for having me. It was fun.
Thank, thank you very much. Thank you. Have a lovely evening. Have a good day. Bye bye. Thank you very
I
much.
thank you for tuning in.